Hey, I'm Adam with Tech.AV Club. We're in Vegas Pro 17, and we're going to talk about how to emergency white balance. So this little shot right here was white balanced by my camera. It's not perfect. It's actually a little blue, and I know that because I know how everything's supposed to look. Now, to be fair, in this scenario, I would actually not be white balancing for an emergency white balance unless it didn't match other shots in the series, like if it was part of a short film and this one shot just looks so different than the other shots or something like that. But in this scenario, this is a good little shot to use to explain emergency white balancing. So right white balancing is done in the camera with a white card where you can zoom in with the camera and hit white balance, and it takes that white card with the current light you have and creates a perfect white. You can also, there's other ways to do it with the camera as well. And another thing you can do is actually have a card. I actually have a whole tutorial for Vegas Pro about how to appropriately white balance with a color palette card, and that color palette card is so helpful, and it gives you perfect colors and whites and everything. That's the appropriate way to do it. Now, in this scenario, there is no white card. The white balance happens to be okay, but this will work if your white balance is way off. This is an emergency white balance. This is not, I want to make that clear, this is not the way I suggest you should white balance everything. This is how to white balance when you don't have another way to white balance. So, first off, if you hit Alt-G, and if you don't have Vegas Pro 16, really, I just want you to look at the vector scopes. You can go to View and go to Window Layouts and Vector Scopes. You can do this without Vegas Pro 17. But this Vegas Pro 17 obviously makes it easier with this color grading layout. So this shot's naturally a little bit overexposed in some areas, and it's also got some blacks that can be darkened. One way to do that is with your input min and input max, or you can just go to your levels effects here and drop that on your timeline, and you can kind of crush your blacks a little bit or lift your whites a little bit to increase the contrast. I suggest you do this beforehand when you're doing a shot because your whites need to be kind of all together bright. If your brightness is really low, see, that's a white right there, but it's really more of a gray. Your eye kind of tricks you that it's white, but it's really more of a gray. So what I want is your actual whites, if possible, to be the appropriate brightness, right, to hit the top of this histogram. Now, you don't necessarily have to, I'm crushing them a little bit. I can back them off from peeking over the histogram as well. So I'm kind of crushing my whites a little bit, and I'm backing them off just a little bit there. So now I have a white that is the near appropriate brightness. And what I want to do is actually see how white it is. Now remember, this is not a perfect white color card. This is just something that in our shot that's close to white. If I didn't have this, I would use the Key West on my shirt. If I didn't have that, I would try to use the white of my eyes. I would try to use something. Now notice I would not use the doors because those doors are just, they're off-white. So they're not actually something you want to white balance to. So what you're going to do is we're actually going to go to Event Pan Crop. We're going to hit this button right here, and that pulls up the Event Pan Crop. And make sure that your sync cursor is selected, and we're going to make 3 shots, 3 selections. So first, I'm going to zoom in on the white, the most natural white occurring in my shot. You can use the scroll wheel in the hand to move around here, but I want to get it fully just the most natural white I got. Now this white's just a little blue, and we're gonna fix that. So you can also see here it's very broad. It's not just white. It's actually anything below here is black. These are colors, and anything at the top of this one is white in your waveforms. Now also in your vector scope, you can see that this white too, perfect white, is right in the smack dab of your vector scope. This is in the center, so it looks white, but it's not a perfect white. So what we're going to be doing is trying to get this white more to the center. Now, we're not going to try and get it perfectly centered because it's not a perfect white, but we do want it to be a more perfect white. This is how the white balance is going to work. So the next thing you do is you can grab this effect right here. Now again, like I said, I'm trying to do it in a way that you can do it in older versions of Vegas as well, but this color palette thing is so nice, this little Vegas Pro 17 color wheels and stuff. But white balance, go to this white balance effect. Now you would use this no matter what version you have. You drop that on here, and you can actually take this little dropper and select what's supposed to be white. Now, I don't like that selection. That's a little better. Now, individual pixels are going to be a little different, but get something that makes it, when you select it, it should look a bit more actually white. So now when you go back to Event Pan Crop, over here, you can actually create a new keyframe. This is our second keyframe, where, oops, you could hit 16 by 9, and there you go. Now you can see the whole thing. Now if we take the white balance off, it doesn't change it a whole lot, which is good. That's exactly kind of what we want, but we do want to change it a little bit more because it is a little too blue. So if we go back to Event Pan Crop, go over here, we can see that it is just a bit too blue. So if we go back to white balance, maybe reselect the white here, and then now if we look at the other shot, you can see it's really changed the colors too much actually. But it's definitely gotten rid of the blue. So what we're trying to do is find that happy little medium there. Find that happy medium where the colors look correct. So we're going to go back to our zoom in on the white in the Event Pan Crop. Again, if you don't have this cursor sync selected, you're going to be having a lot of extra steps there. So I'm going to try and zero in on something that's more white. That's still a little bit blue. If you hit Control while you drag this, it won't drag very fast, but you can actually kind of find what you think is the perfect white. Something that's not pink or blue or yellow. You want something that sits as a kind of a more perfect white color. So now if we go back to our Event Pan Crop and we select this one here, it looks a lot better. It's definitely got rid of the blues, but it's still too dark. So you can actually go back to your white balance here and then adjust the temperature. And you can actually warm it up by going this direction, or you can cool it down by going this direction. Cooling it makes it bluer, makes it more like sunlight. Warming it makes it more like indoor lights. So what we want to do is actually cool it up. So the white, see, the white looks really good, but the kind of overall it's still a little too warm looking. So we're gonna back off the warmness. So now what we've done is I've jacked this up. So I'm just gonna double click it and return it back to normal. This is still it's still not exactly what we're looking for. It's actually a bit too blue now. So I'm going to warm it up just a touch. Now you gotta trust your eyes on this. You're trying to make it look normal again, not necessarily a perfect white. And then you can kind of mess with the tint a little bit if you want. I'm gonna drop the tint a little bit. That's kind of changing the direction of this color here. And you want this to look, this neutral color you selected, you want it to actually look white, look as white as it can be. So that's too far, obviously, and that's too far. So see, you're going through the different spectrum of color there. So right about there looks pretty good. So that is a nice little white balance. It got rid of the blue in the shot, and it kind of brings it back to a normal, kind of the normal rich colors that it's supposed to be. Now here's another check you can do, and this is again, so this is the emergency white balancing. This is something that would be in a more extreme situation than this. What you can do is you can actually go back to your Event Pan Crop. You can go here and check your whiteness. So if you look at this, this is actually pretty nice. Your whiteness is a nice thin line right here. A perfect white would be right over that 100, a nice, nice thin line that doesn't arc or anything right over that 100. This isn't a white card and a perfect white. This is the perfect white right here. This is the shadow on the snowball microphone. So I'm not trying to make this one big blacked out thing of white. I'm just trying to make this section there's some true white to appear, and if I can do that, then everything else will follow suit. So like I said, since it's not a white card, we're not aiming for the true center. This is pretty close to the center, and since it's not perfect white, I think that's great. So the next thing we're going to do is actually create a third keyframe, and we're going to go someplace here where here's where I show my arm. we're going to kind of zoom in on my arm. And here's why. Skin tone matters. And so you can actually see this little skin tone juts off in this direction right here. But that's actually a little too high up. So it should be between kind of like 113 to 144, I think. But kind of this little range right through here is where skin tone should be. This is fine. That's why it looks fine. It looks fine, but it doesn't look quite perfect. So if your shot's still struggling, one thing you can do is you can go, now this is where we're going to use this color wheels right here to adjust it. But you could, if you do not have 17, go to the color corrector. I'll show you where that is real quick. The color corrector effect right here. Gamma is a skin tone. It's kind of a mid-tones, right? So this little one here in the middle. So you can see that it's going a little too red and a little too magenta. If I just want it to turn this way a little bit. So I'm actually going to kind of cheat it. I hit Control so this little dial doesn't move very fast. And I'm going to kind of just turn it just a smidge that direction. So now when I look at the full shot, so I don't like that exactly. I think I'm going to lessen that up a little bit. So if you want to change it back, just go back to your skin tone. It's still, it messes with more than just it messes with all the midtones, right? So we moved everything when we moved that. So if we zero this back out and we want to move our skin tones just a little bit, we can actually do that, and then you can actually kind of opposite direction just a little bit, move your gain and move your lift. Remember, hold Control when you're doing it. I'm talking microscopic amounts here. So now I think that fixes the skin tone problem here while giving this white a good white. My skin tone looks the right skin tone, and here we have just normal looking colors of the off-white in the background. Something else that I want to note that I kept thinking of while I was editing this tutorial that I really wish I had said in the Pro version is if you look at a color corrector wheel, there's some neat things you can learn from it. I'm going to go ahead and throw a default one on this track here just to show you something simple. So this is the color correction wheel that you can get no matter what version of Pro you're on. Well, I would say no matter what version, but if you have a somewhat modern version of Pro, you can get this one as well. But it's just it's an easy one to point out the actual way a color wheel works. And so this last piece I'm giving you, I want to give you the tools to tweak it further. Because I'm done with my color correction on that one, but I think there's some more just things that should be said about color correction. Lows are your shadows, mids are like your midtones, and highs are like your bright lights, your bright areas. And that tweaking was pretty normal, just barely tweaking. If you got a really messed up shot if you're ever moving these a ton. And so one way to think about this, if your skin looks too red, you might need to pull it towards the blue. If your shadows look blue, you might need to pull it towards the orange area or the yellow area. The way this works is everything has its exact opposites laid out. And so that's actually how you correct. If something's too blue, you move it away from blue. If something's too yellow, you move it towards blue. Start with your midtones, and unless you can just see, oh my gosh, my shadows are blue, or oh my gosh, my bright areas are like yellow, then unless you see something like that right off, I would start with your midtones and then tug these gently back to correct it. Those are just some loose rules of thumb. Your saturation is something you can drop as well, or gain or add to it to kind of make it feel more normal. Sometimes the colors just really don't seem as present and vibrant as you expected them to. That's when you would add saturation. And sometimes they seem too vibrant. They seem not in a good way, not in like a Bob Ross kind of painting way, and like oh my gosh, it looks like I look sick because I look too red and whatever. If your saturation's too high, just back it down a little bit, and that might actually fix some of your color problems as well. Anything you buy through our affiliates links helps us out a ton. Thank you so much for watching. Udemy is on its way. If you're wanting to learn editing in a more formal manner, Udemy is what I'm working on now. It should be out this January, and we've got more tutorials. There will be a tutorial blitz after this. As soon as Udemy's done, I plan on getting more than a tutorial a week out for a while. I'll have just as many tutorials as I can throughout the month of February. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.